Hello. I hope you've had a good Christmas and Happy New Year. I'd like to talk about a number of things today. First of all, they're now talking about BBC bias and should we be paying the licence fee. The licence fee is historic. It's how the BBC was funded to start with. But to start with, we only had the BBC in the 20s and 30s when it was the radio. Then we had television, which was BBC first, and then ITV. I remember we only had 2 channels when I was growing up, and then we had BBC 2, and then Channel 4, and then Channel 5. And now we've got numerous numbers of channels. So should we still be paying our licence fee to fund the BBC? Now everybody's saying we shouldn't be paying the licence and the BBC should be funding itself. Now, questions have got to be asked. Questions have to be asked about the BBC. Somebody has to look at BBC and how it is funded and how it makes its money from its programmes. Now somebody has to look at what's happening with the World Service, or BBC World I think it's called. I think what happens, now I stand to be corrected, I think that what happens is that the BBC uses our tax money, which is what it is, when we pay our licence fee. They use our tax money to make a programme. Say something like Strictly, Open All Hours, Call a Midwife, EastEnders, whatever. Then they put it out on the BBC. Then they can sell that programme or license the programme. In the case of Strictly, it would be done under licence. But it's not done directly to the BBC, it's done through BBC World. And what the BBC do, as far as I can see, is sell the programme to BBC World. Then BBC World sell it to the rest of the world. Now, how much are BBC World making and where does the money go? I can't find any reference to it anywhere. I had a look this morning on the internet and I'm going to have another look again. It would be interesting if somebody could explain what happens to the profit that the BBC World makes on the programmes that our taxpayers' money, the BBC licence fee, pays for to produce to start with. I think that's an important question. Once we've got the true answer to that, can the BBC be self-funding by selling its programmes? We may not be able to get rid of the TV licence, but we may be able to reduce the cost of it. Instead of being over £100 a year, let's make it £50 a year. Just a standard basic rate. And if the BBC are making money on BBC World by selling these programmes and keeping the profit, that should be used to play the over 75s free TV licence. It's simple. But people are making it too complicated. Anyway, that's my first point. Second point is on BBC bias. We all know the BBC is biased. You only have to see it over the last election. How much airtime did they give the Brexit Party? The Brexit Party was the largest party with the most votes at the last national election, which was the EU election. But they treated it as if it wasn't even there. They talked about Labour, they talked about the Liberals, they talked about the SDP. And the Brexit Party only got a little Oh, and the Brexit Party is standing as well. They only got a bit part. This is because the BBC are biased. Now, the other thing they're biased about is global warming, which they now call climate change. Oh, they said the science is settled, it's all done. But if you look at the information that's available on things like What's Up With That and Lord Christopher Monckton's videos, you will know that the whole climate change, global warming, has been a scam. Now, I'm not saying that the Earth may not be warming up, but I'm saying that the information that we've been given has been altered. That's why it's a scam. We know this because of the climate change emails. Read ClimateGate emails if you don't believe me. The Met Office wrote to the University of East Anglia, who were doing the modelling, to tell them not to come up with scenarios as business as normal. That is not how to do science. You cannot say, oh, this is what's happening, and we're going to make the science fit the answer we want, which is what they were doing. And they called it forcing. The other thing they said was that the thermometers years ago couldn't read true figures. Because we got digital and computerized technology now, it's far better than the thermometers that we had in the past. Therefore, they've had to alter the figures of the historical records in the past. Now, one reference to this was in Australia. Australia had a heat wave in the 20s. It was done by the thermometers in Stevenson cages. Now, they're using, what's it called? They're using mercury thermometers. And the guy in this one station didn't work on a Sunday. But there's a record in the book for the Sunday, which was the hottest day ever recorded in Australia. And I think it was something like 50 degrees. But because he wasn't supposed to be working on the Sunday, they scrubbed it out of the record. Oh, he doesn't work on a Sunday, scrub it out. And this is how they're manipulating the figures. So they're making it look cooler in the past and hotter in the future. They're adding figures to the observed temperature. You look at the BBC weather map on the TV, and it will tell you it's going to be +1 tomorrow morning. You get up in the morning, you look outside, and it's white with frost. That means it's -1, -2 at least. Are they using the prediction figures to make the figures look hotter than it really is? I don't know. I'm only suggesting this. We just don't trust the scientists anymore. I did 6 years looking at scientific papers around lead shot for shooting. I found that what the scientists were doing were writing a discussion paper on the subject. They were then writing another discussion paper on the subject. They would then write a third using the 2 other papers they'd written before. And to make all the science look different, they would have a gang of about 6 scientists write each paper, but it would be the same gang of 6. But each time, one of them would take the lead, which means they would be the name in the front. So it would be the Smith report, the Jones report, the Taylor report. I'm made up names, but this is what happens. And they write the first report and the second report, and then the third report they write as a scientific paper, quoting the discussion paper, the other two that they've written before. That proves what they say proves their argument. But it wasn't a scientific paper, it was a discussion paper. It was an if, but, and what if this happens? And then it all of a sudden comes out in a scientific paper and says, this is happening. This is what it is. And I believe the same thing is happening with global warming. The scientists are writing papers on papers on papers and using biased papers in favour of their argument to prove their argument. So it's lies on lies on lies on lies. And people are falling for it. And we cannot fall for it anymore or we are ruined. Anyway, that's the bit on bias. Now, transport. They're talking about the trains and how much train fares cost. I used to travel from Nelsey Station in North Somerset, which is 10 miles west of Bristol, to Bath every day. The train journey was just under an hour. It used to take 50 minutes. Half an hour to Bristol and half an hour to Bath. I was lucky to start with. I was 17 years old. I wasn't earning a lot of money. I was earning, I think, £8 a week, I think I was earning in 72. I used to catch the train at 7 o'clock. I used to get into Bath at 10 to 8. 10 minutes walk to work, and I was at work round about 8 o'clock, close enough. 10 past or 5 past if the trains were a little bit late. Boss was okay with that. Then over time, the train tables changed like they do now, but they were... And I couldn't get in for 8 o'clock. Because they'd stopped that train, they'd taken the train out. So I had to, for a while, catch an earlier train that got me in half an hour earlier. And then they changed it again. Well, I couldn't catch a train at 5 o'clock in the morning and get 2 hours before work. That was just ridiculous. So the boss said, right, if you can get in for 8:30, you're going to have half an hour lunch instead of an hour, which was brilliant, and it worked. But the cost was going up all the time. And I travelled on the train for about 15 years, going to Bath every day. And it was brilliant. I had a ticket, I had a season ticket, I could get on any train I wanted. Coming home, and they also had local trains. When I went to Bath, I would go on a intercity train from Weston to Paddington it was. I'd get on at Nelsey, it would stop at Bristol, and then it'd stop at Bath, and I'd get off. Coming home, I could bring 2 local trains, local train from Bath to Bristol, and then get off, get on another local train, and get back to Nelsey. I could catch any train I wanted to. And the cost wasn't prohibitive. I wasn't making loads of money, but I could afford it. But the cost kept going up and up and up. And in the late 80s, it got to a stage where it was cheaper for me to get a motorbike in the summer, and it was too far to go because it's 25 miles to work in the winter when it was cold, to ride the bike. So I would ride the bike in the summer, save up some money, because it was now cheaper to take a motorbike and go to Bath and take the train. I would then save my money up and use the money to buy a season ticket for 3 months during the bad weather in the winter. But the prices kept going up and up and up, and in the end I was priced out, and I ended up getting a car because it was cheaper to drive than it was to take the motorbike, or at that stage, to get their motorbike repaired, because the bikes were going up in price as well. So I ended up getting a small car, because it was cheaper than the trains. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the fires in Oz. Now, on Facebook, I have a few friends that are in Australia, and they're telling me that the fires are not as bad as the BBC are reporting. Yes, the fires are there, and yes, they're bad for the people that have had their houses destroyed. And yes, people have died. But the mad thing is, farmers who are burning, what we call back burning, to stop their houses burning, are being fined. People were taking their own measures to stop the fire affecting them, and they're being fined for starting fires. You can't make this up. There doesn't seem to be any attempt to make fire breaks. It seems to be grass fires that are turning into forest fires. If you've got the fire going over grass, we know how to stop it. You make fire breaks. You either bulldoze the topsoil into a mound that helps stop the fire, or else you can beat the fire out with fire beaters. And grass, you can do this. But they just seem to be letting it burn, and they're trying to fight a great big fire. And I feel ever so sorry for the Australians, because we've got these environmentalists controlling how we fight fires. They won't allow them to, in California, one of the guys I know in California who's a gunsmith was telling me that they're not allowed to clear the undergrowth because of the bugs and grubs that are in it around the houses. Oh, they're allowed to have a lawn, but the scrub area they got to leave for bugs and grubs because of the environmentalists. So a lot of the fires in California, where they would clean the scrub out, have been created by the environmentalists. They have made the problem worse. And I wonder if this is the same in Australia. You know, why are they not cutting fire breaks? Because the fire is doing more damage than cutting the fire break would. We know how to stop forest fires. Yes, they're a horrible thing. Yes, they're difficult to deal with. But we know how to do it. We can stop fires, or at least attempt to stop them. All they seem to be doing is just pouring water on it. Why aren't they cutting fire breaks? Why are they not back burning on grassland so that the fire that's coming then stops? I don't know enough about it. I'm not going to argue the point, but I've made what I say. What I say is there. Anyway, 2020, the year's gone on, and I leave this to you. Happy New Year, everybody. End of the month, we leave the EU. Yes! But, are we leaving with no deal? Or are we going to end up paying the EU £39 billion? I would rather leave with no deal and save the money. Use the money for the trains and the National Health Service and elderly care. Anyway, Ian, goodbye.